My name is Katrin, and I'm one of the TI Japanese second years. And in the Japanese program, we have very strong relationships with several different companies and organizations. So when I first came to MIIS, I had this big idea that I was going to work at the UN and make the world better. When I got to MIIS, I realized, one, that Japanese isn't a UN language, and so I was a little bit opposed. And also that the UN internships weren't paid, which was a pretty big element of importance for me, like it was for Erin, I think she mentioned in her speech. So sort of threw that out the door a little bit and started looking at the relationships that were already established at MIIS and then what potentially was available that I could do. And in the Japanese program, we have two major relationships established. One of them is with Honda R&D, which is Honda that makes Honda cars. That's located in Ohio. It's really only Japanese English interpreting, so Japanese students, if you're interested really in that, that's a pretty major possibility for you. The other option is the one that I actually ended up doing, which is spending a summer in Geneva, Switzerland, working at WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organization. So MIIS has a very strong relationship with WIPO. They take, I think, pretty much all of the MIIS languages, definitely Japanese, Chinese, Korean, pretty sure they take Spanish, German, Portuguese. I think French you might be out of luck, but who knows about this year? So we'll see. You'll definitely be getting more information about this going forward. And so WIPO has two positions. One of them is a translation fellow, and the other is terminology. And so I'll start with terminology because that was not what I did, so it'll be over quickly. So terminology management is about managing different term bases that WIPO has and making sure that all of the different languages have terms associated with them. And it sounds like you do work, you're given a term in a language and you find that term in your target language. And I didn't do that, so that's all I can tell you about the work that they did. So I was a translation fellow. And when you're a translation fellow, you take patent abstracts and you translate those abstracts from whatever language they are in into English. And so patents, as you can imagine, are pretty dry, technical, hopefully to the point documents. Some of them are not to the point because the patent authors have a very high opinion of themselves. Not fun to deal with that. And so yeah, I was pretty nervous going into the selection process thinking that I don't know anything about patents. I don't even know anything about car engines or semiconductors or chemicals, like, because I could look at an English patent and have no idea what's going on. And that's okay. They don't expect you to know. It would be a little bit ridiculous to expect someone to come into an internship with complete encyclopedic technical knowledge about the cutting edge of all of these various technical fields. So when I came in, the program is very much a teaching and a learning program. So when you first come in, they really start from the basics of, okay, what is a patent? How does a patent work? What are the patent systems in all of the various different countries? And then how do you make patents work internationally? And that's the role that WIPO is playing, is trying to facilitate international applicability of patents. And that's where the translation work comes in, because if you want a Japanese patent to be applicable around the world, it can't just be in Japanese, because no one outside of Japan is going to be able to read it and know what's going on. And they start from there, and they also go in and give you a lot of opportunities to investigate certain topics. Like for a week, I would do all automotive. And that would be my chance to go look at all the Wikipedia pages of, okay, how does a car engine work? How do brakes work? How car treads too. There were a lot of car treads. And then the next week I would get into, say, chemical. And the next week would be back on cars again. And the next week would be semiconductors. And so I would have a chance to really focus on a certain area where now I could probably tell you how a car engine works, just because I've looked at all the various pieces of technology to try to understand that. And so I haven't talked about the selection process yet, which I'm sure all of you are very curious about. I would very much second what I think what someone else said, I don't remember who it was, but to not get too overstressed about it right now. You guys have finals in a few weeks. It's totally okay to focus on your finals and not get overly worked up about your internship. I was thinking about more or less what I wanted to do, but I didn't end up making a decision about what I was going to focus on until the beginning of February. And I had really been wondering whether to do interpreting or whether to do translation, because TI, I could have looked at either. But I decided that I did have some experience interpreting before I had come to MIIS, and that it was going to be an option that was always available for me to pursue. But patent translation isn't something that you can just sort of start. It has a very particular language. You require very specific training and experience. And the opportunity at WIPO is really the best way to get that, in my opinion. So that was why I decided to have as my plan A, WIPO, and then plan B was going to be Honda R&D. And in about mid-February, the head of the Asian language department at WIPO comes to MIIS every year. And she gives a presentation more about WIPO and about how the patent system works and how the selection process works and so on. So if there's any changes this year, she's going to come and probably tell you, I think she's coming.
Tracy?
Sally? Maybe it's Tracy. Okay, Tracy's coming. In which case she's not the head of the Asian languages, she's head of terminology. But someone from WIPO will come and tell you about how WIPO works and what's involved in the internship and so on. And for the translation side, there was a translation test, and it's possible Tracy is going to be doing interviews on campus. My year there were interviews where you get to obviously talk more about your experience and then ask the questions that you want to ask. And I got the decision early in April, and after that was doing a whole lot of running around getting visa set up and so on, so that'll be a lot of fun. If you get the WIPO internship, definitely talk to the previous WIPO interns, because they will tell you about all the various visa pitfalls that can happen that would be best to avoid. And so I've sort of gone on in a pretty winding way, but I also conclude with what to do during your internship and what to be aware of. And so I'm probably going to cover ground that previous speakers have already touched on, but no one's really going to expect you to come in and be absolutely perfect at what you're doing. You're an intern. The reason that you're there is to learn about it and to gain experience. And so don't be overly nervous if you don't know about something. Please ask about it. Or be okay with maybe the first time you try something, it's not going to go very well. That's okay. Learn from that experience and then get better. I was definitely not a perfect patent translator when I started. I really wasn't when I ended. But being honest with yourself and open to that feedback and asking questions is really helpful for your learning experience. Like when I was doing my translation, sometimes just out of my own volition, Japanese and English has a lot of grammar that does not play nice with each other. And there's lots of different solutions for things that you can do with that, and some solutions are better than others. So I would take particularly problematic Japanese passages and translate them 4 or 5 different ways and bring all of those into my reviewers to try to get feedback on, okay, this is good, this is also good, this is maybe not so good. And now I have that entire glossary and list of things that I can draw on later. And so that would be the biggest advice. Oh, and don't spend 2 days researching something if it's really complicated and doesn't make sense, because I wanted to show that I was able to do everything on my own, and it turns out the patent was just really badly written, and I actually needed help to parse out what was going on. So concluding points is be open to feedback and open about your own learning experience, and realize that it's okay for everything to not go perfectly as long as you try to turn that into making it perfect later.